If you're a guitarist or pianist playing jazz, you're going to want to have your comping skills well in order. So in this video, I'm going to be going over 4 jazz comping patterns that you need to know. Coming up. Comping is just a way to describe what you're actually doing when you are accompanying somebody in a jazz setting. Since both pianists and guitarists are chordal instruments, they are most often the ones playing chords behind the band to provide harmonic context for what they are playing. Or of course, they're accompanying themselves. This being said, the skill of comping is difficult to learn or teach because there's so many nuances involved. That's why comping patterns can be a good starting place to get the essence of the rhythms you can play over jazz standards. So pattern number 1 is the Freddie Green comping pattern. So take a look at the Freddie Green comping pattern here, and you'll notice right away that it's really just quarter notes being played. However, there's so much more to the Freddie Green comping pattern and how it's actually played that is important for you to be aware of. Now, Freddie Green was the guitarist in Count Basie's orchestra, and while he is a guitarist, the art of playing quarter notes like this is equally as important to piano players. The idea behind what Freddie Green was actually playing was the rhythmic, not necessarily heard, but felt aspect of playing and accompanying a band. So let's take a look at the application of the Freddie Green comping pattern as far as it goes using a jazz blues in concert B flat. So the chords for a blues in B flat are B flat 7 to an E flat 7, that's the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord, to the 4 chord, 1 chord, to the 2 chord, to the 5 chord, and back to the 1 chord. And perhaps a 5 to turn back around. So when playing the Freddie Green comping pattern, the important thing to remember is, yes, we're playing quarter notes, but we want to be playing them short and even, and we don't want to be accenting any beats. So it'll sound like this just on the B flat 7. Now, a common mistake that people will make with the Freddie Green comping pattern is accenting beat 2 like this, so. And that's not what we're doing here. That's getting closer to the style of gypsy jazz playing. Short, even, across the board on all the quarter notes. So here's what it sounds like over a blues. Couple extra facts worth noting whether you're a guitar player or a piano player. Freddie Green actually had a much bigger guitar than I do, and he actually played it more angled, so that it was angling almost more up, and so the attack is much more intense with the rhythm when Freddie Green is actually playing. So something to be aware, again, I mentioned earlier, it's that felt less than heard style of comping, which isn't necessarily what you need to do when you're playing, especially in a small group setting, but it's just something to be aware of. And the second thing to be aware of with this style is that Freddie Green played very sparse voicings. Now, in the case of being a guitar player, you'll notice on the screen, we have 3-note voicings, which include the root, the third, and the flat 7 on every single chord. These are essentially just the bare minimum most important notes that you can play in a chord. Not big, fat, huge voicings. So if you're a piano player, you'll want to be playing shell voicings or very simple thirds and sevenths, which, by the way, Freddie Green also played quite often, is just literally the 2 notes. Just like that. So Freddie Green comping pattern, really good one to know whether you're a guitar player like it was originally played by or a piano player. Comping pattern number 2 is called the Charleston. Now, taking a look at the Charleston, the basic rhythm here is a dotted quarter note followed by an eighth note. Now, as far as jazz goes, the important part to really notice about this is the syncopation. So that eighth note is actually landing on the and of two, and we'll talk more about that in a second in a couple of patterns later here. But syncopation and playing on offbeats is something that really happens a lot in jazz comping and even jazz improvisation. So the basic sound of this comping pattern is this. Okay, and this comping pattern actually is quite literally played in the tune Killer Joe. It starts like this. But of course, when I'm talking about the Charleston as a comping pattern here, this is just a jumping off point to go into other rhythmic ideas and get some foundations here. So let's apply this Charleston, again, quite literally over top of this entire jazz blues form. So 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that I would slightly accent that eighth note, which is entirely acceptable, or you can go ahead and play it very straight and even, kind of like we did with the Freddie Green pattern. However, most often I'm hearing the accent on the and of two here in this comping pattern. Now, another thing to start thinking about outside of just the pattern when you're comping as a pianist or guitarist is using what we call voice leading. So voice leading, simply put, means that when we have a chord, we're looking for minimal or more efficient movements that we can make to connect like voices together. So for example, when we look at bar 5 and 6, we have an E flat 9 voicing, and our E diminished voicing, if you look at my hand, again, whether you play guitar or piano, you can see the movement there, is very minimal to play a voicing that creates good voice leading movement within the chord. And again, in another pattern coming up here, I'll show you how we can really take this to another level and actually also move chords melodically. So when you're thinking about picking voicings, again, being a pianist or a guitarist, think about how you can voice lead your chords together rather than playing just stock voicings, which may not always connect together in a fluid motion. By the way, if you are a pianist or guitarist and you need help with learning more voicings and more stuff along these lines, we do have a jazz guitar and a jazz piano accelerator course in my Inner Circle membership. So I'll leave a link in the description down below to that if that sounds like something that would be of interest to you. So that's number 2, the Charleston. Comping pattern number 3 is the basic bossa nova comping pattern. So bossa nova is a straight eighth important style within jazz. Lots of songs that we consider jazz standards are bossa novas, like The Girl from Ipanema, How Insensitive, Wave, Corcovado, and on goes the list. So having a basic understanding of how to play this style is an important thing to have under your belt. And really, when it comes to bossa nova, there are underlying patterns or rhythms that help build it. Now, I am a professional jazz musician. I played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigs, and I've definitely had to play bossa novas and get by playing them. That being said, I am not an expert bossa nova player, and the pattern I'm about to show you is, again, like the other patterns, a great jumping off point to go further with this style. It's not necessarily exclusively what you hear great Brazilian bossa nova guitar players playing, or even American ones like Charlie Bird. So taking a look at this basic bossa nova comping pattern here, we can see it all here lying out in the first 2 measures, and it sounds like this. So you'll notice a lot of syncopation going over the beat. Again, all like right here, all this is happening, tied notes together. And so it creates this really floating kind of feeling as you're moving forward. So here's actually the chord changes to blue bossa, and here's what the comping pattern sounds like over top of the whole form. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So by all means, use this as a great jumping off point, and then go out and study other great guitarists that played bossa nova and see what they're doing rhythmically. Comping pattern number 4 is accenting offbeats. I mentioned this earlier in the video that playing syncopations and offbeats are really important to the style of jazz. And so essentially in this one, I'm actually not only talking about one comping pattern, but I'm talking about many different comping patterns. So for example, take a look at this ascending offbeats comping exercise, and let's discuss what exactly is an offbeat. So we know the strong beats are 1, 2, 3, and 4, at least when we're in 4/4 time. And the offbeats are 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, as if we're breaking those quarter notes up into eighth notes, and the second eighth note is the offbeat. So when you listen to really great compers like Bill Evans, Red Garland, Wes Montgomery, Joe Pass, like you're hearing them all the time using offbeats in their comping, anticipating beats, and so on. So what are the options for the offbeats we can play? Taking a look at this first measure here, we see that we can play the and of 1. Again, this first eighth note rest here is the 1, and the and is this second eighth note right here that happens to be tied to a quarter note. So if we were to go through an entire blues and just play this measure of rhythm over the entire blues, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 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 2, 3, 4 and 2, 3, 4, 1 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 and 2, 3, 4 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4. But we can do the exact same if we look over at measure 2 with the and of 2, and that would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and so on and so forth. The other two options here are the and of 3 and the and of 4. So getting good at playing offbeats and feeling the strong beats within yourself is a really good skill to have as a comper. Now, if you want to get really creative and really test yourself, you could play something like this ascending offbeats comping exercise, which essentially is every bar is moving up. So first it's the and of 1 in bar 1, the and of 2, the and of 3, the and of 4, and then we start over here in bar 6 at the and of 1 again. So let's give this a listen and see what it sounds like. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4. Now, one other thing to mention is, again, I talked about voice leading earlier. And so even if you're not a guitar player here and you're a piano player, just understand the essence of this exercise, which is ascending. So essentially what I'm thinking about with my voicing is, what is the top note? In this case, it's this note right here, okay? And then what I'm going to do is think of the next melody note I could play, but fit an E flat voicing underneath it. And then the next note I can play, but still fit a B flat voicing underneath it. And then the next one I can play E flat, but here's the melody note. Then I'm gonna leave that melody note there and play the E diminished seventh. And then bring that melody note up half step, play another B flat 7 voicing. And then let's actually keep that melody note the same and play a G7 flat 9. And then we'll skip the C minor 7 for the sake of the offbeat part of the exercise. And then F7 on the melody note, up a half step, and up one more step there, one whole step for the B flat 9. So the essence of it is think melodically when you're thinking about creating great comping. So instead of thinking about what voicing can I possibly play, think about what melody am I playing with my comping that I can create voicings around. Now, most importantly to recognize is that jazz standards are made up of chord progressions. And so you want to make sure that you know voicings and chords and the most important chord progressions in jazz. So on the screen right now, I have a video of the most important jazz chord progressions that you need to know. Make sure that you know all of them and go check that one out right now. I mentioned again, I have a jazz piano and jazz guitar accelerator course in our Inner Circle membership. Check that out in the link in the description down below, or I'll leave it here on the screen. Make sure you like this video if you found it helpful. Please subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.